discuss the Elm Tree principles of mastery through which we will redefine the word winning, not to reflect what's on the scoreboard, like how much effort you give. And before I do that, I like to recall a very famous basketball game, which some of you may have seen or may have heard of. It was the 1992 regional championship final in the NCAA tournament between Duke and Kentucky. Duke trailed Kentucky by a point with 2 seconds left, to recall. And in the huddle, Mike Krzyzewski asked Grant Hill, his forward, if he could throw the ball the length of the court. And Grant Hill immediately responded, yes. And later, Krzyzewski, all he was looking for at that moment was a positive response. All he wanted right then was a positive response. And when he got that from Hill, he knew, and the team knew, they at least had a chance in this impossible situation. So Grant Hill throws the ball the length of the court. Christian Lake catches it, turns around, hits the shot. Duke goes to win the game, goes on to the Final Four, wins their second consecutive national championship. Now that's the first benefit of the Elm Tree mastery principle, because that is about control. We worry about the things we can control. In that instance, Grant Hill couldn't control anything, couldn't control the situation, the crowd, Duke's chances of repeating, or Duke's legacy, or any of those things. All he could control was throwing that pass, which he did. And all Christian Laettner could do was catch the ball, which he did. And he did those two things, and the rest, as they say, is history. But I bring that up to say the first thing we can control is our efforts. Now we want to go to our first slide to spell out what Elm Tree stands for, and the first is effort. Question for you guys. Why do we play sports? So why do we put on uniforms, and why do we practice and invite our parents to come sit in the stands and cheer on? Why do we do this? Pretty simple, but let's remind ourselves, why do we do this?
For fun.
For fun, exactly. That's it. That's exactly what I was going for. I mean, if it's not enjoyable, why do it? I read this story recently in the Washington Post, and maybe you have heard of it too, that a lot of kids, were dropping out of sports right at age 13, and they were saying it wasn't fun anymore. So what's the point? John Wooden, one of the most famous coaches, maybe the greatest coach in any sport of all time, built this thing called the pyramid of success, which he measured competitive greatness. And one of the building blocks was enthusiasm. And without enthusiasm, if you don't enjoy the task, you can't really be successful at the task. So effort has to have meaning. And I know that a lot of you have seen this kind of replays of Ray Lewis, the former Baltimore Ravens linebacker, getting the team all pumped up before the game, and doing these chants and all these sayings that they did before every game. People do that during practice, and one of my favorite routines, and I've implemented this when I coach, is in the middle of practice, just bring them up for a group breakdown. You could have a different kid each time come and do the team chant or make up some song that they can all rally around, and getting different kids involved gets the enthusiasm level high, and that kind of practice, that kind of routine leads to sustained energy, and I think maximum effort. Because it's not just telling kids you got to work hard and play hard. I think when you give them something to rally around, they will give that maximum effort. But first, you have to have that sustained energy, I think. So we're gonna move on to our next principle, which is learning. And I have a question for you guys again. Is there any one skill or characteristic that you've taken from your own experience as an athlete that you apply to your life? It could be anything from any level of sport that you've been in, but anything that you've learned that you have learned to apply.
I have one. I think persistence, like when things are really, really hard, knowing that I have it in me to push myself through it and actually make it.
Very good, because there's always struggle. There's always struggle. That's very good. Anything else?
Well, mine is related. It's how my teammates really benefit from knowing I'm behind them. Even when they're struggling or having an off day, how important it is to support and encourage, as opposed to get frustrated and criticize.
I love that. See, I love the social aspect of it. And I have talked about this a lot when you apply certain things to, when people use the word team in a corporate setting, it kind of makes me laugh because I know the real meaning of team, because in an athletic setting, it really is more like a family. And you can always, not to pick on these people, but you can tell those workmates of yours that have never been on a team, that never played sports, because they really don't know how to do that, right? They don't know how to interact on that certain level. So that's one very valuable aspect of sport. You'll learn things that you'll apply later in life. And so with that, I want to go into my next part, which is mistakes. And we all make mistakes, and learning from mistakes that we make during the game. So I have another question for you. When you compete or when you're coaching, what do you fear most? Is there one thing you fear most when you're competing or coaching?
I think failing.
That's it. That's it. That's what I was going for. Thank you very much. That's exactly what it is. I mean, you don't want to do the wrong thing. You don't want to cost your team a point, a touchdown, a basket, or the game. But in terms of outcome or in terms of execution, we can't be perfect, but we can always be perfect in our effort. And so when we go after the task with complete abandon, we'll get more from the experience. And that's why I love the Duke Kentucky game, because that was, he had no fear. Grant Hill, when he threw that ball the length of the court, he had nothing to lose. And thus he had no fear of making a mistake. There was nothing to think about. There's nothing else to focus on. So I love the word aggressive. I know it's kind of a catchphrase, a catch-all in sport. And, sometimes it kind of takes the wrong meaning, especially in football. But I love the image of always attacking, of always going forward, and always being aggressive, and being straightforward with everything you do. So some of you may have heard of Dr. Carol Dweck, renowned psychologist and author of Growth Mindset, who says it's important for parents and coaches to use sports as a vehicle for what she calls the growth mindset. Sport teaches kids to enjoy effort and even struggle.
Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good. Is that where I might play that?
Is that going to be your intro? I didn't mean to hit it so quickly.
No. I mean, I don't know. In a special bridge workshop, that's fine. But anyway, I was going to go on to some techniques for implementing and achieving mastery.
Okay. All right. So I'll just keep going.
Athlete.
So you're not really following the slides, then, is what you're saying?
Oh, I was, but I kind of.
No, that's okay. I just want to make sure I'm keeping up with you. If you wanted to see the slides up, I want to make sure I have the right one up that you wanted.
Oh yeah, you do. Oh yes, okay.
This is the. I don't want to mess you up. You're on a roll. Go ahead.
Oh, that was good. The scoreboard. I'm sorry. The redefining winning. I'm sorry. Okay. That's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to do. Thank you. So, like I said, we want to redefine winning, and here we have the scoreboard definition of winning and the mastery definition of winning. Now, scoreboard, obviously the first one is results. We just think about, the score. Do we win or lose? And once again, I go back to the Duke Kentucky game. Those Duke players, if they're looking up at the scoreboard, they see they're down by one in an impossible situation. They're not going to, defend their championship. It's over. But in terms of, using the mastery definition, it's just effort. What can we do while we're in this situation? Grant Hill throws the ball length of the court, and Christian Laettner catches the ball. So that's effort. Two different outcomes there. Comparison with others. This is something I know we as parents, probably teach our kids too. Just don't compare yourself with other people. It's about getting yourself to improve. What can I improve on? What can I improve on? And what did I learn from my loss in that game? What didn't I do well? What technique did I abandon? What could I have done better? Scoreboard definition: mistakes are never okay. You must be perfect. You must be perfect. You must do everything perfect at all times. But like we discussed before, I know you guys have heard, you can't be perfect. And if you're trying to be perfect, when you do make a mistake, you get taken completely off course. You lose track of your assignment on a play or within the context of the scheme, and you're pretty much render yourself worthless once you make a mistake and if you think that mistakes aren't okay. But like I said, effort can be perfect. Outcome can never be perfect. Our effort can always be perfect. Oh, time.
So why don't you keep going, Al, until you a good stopping point?
Okay. I was going to go through the Elm Tree Toolkit because I like some of those. Those are always interesting. I wanted to get you guys' take on that. But the first one, to plant and water the elm tree, just to tell your team about what that means, what that concept is, and how you're going to be following that throughout the season. I think it's good actually to share that with kids, just to kind of let them know what that is, even though it won't be at the forefront of their minds. Implement a mistake ritual. I really like that one too. I know we've talked before about flushing it, using the visualizing the toilet and flushing the mistake. But there was another one. I took a class from a sports psychologist at Stanford, Jeff Wildfogel, who taught a technique called treeing it. You visualize your mistake, you visualize the tree, you just toss it up in the tree, and you forget about it, so you can't see it, and it's no longer in your vision, so it doesn't exist. Next was effort goals. These are the mini goals for your team or your individual players. And so I think this was mentioned in a discussion, but I played football, and we had a pursuit drill in every team. On every team, we had a pursuit drill, and defensive coordinators stressed this over and over. And when we watch a film after the game, the coordinator would make a point of praising how we had stayed in our lanes, even after maybe a successful run by the offense. Everyone had stayed in their lanes, and if you persist with that, that'll lead to good habits and good outcomes. So that's one of those goals that, like I said, it's maybe doesn't affect the final score, but it gets you in a positive habit, positive ritual. The next is stretch goals. That's trying to get an athlete to do things he or she didn't know they could do. In track and field, I think one in particular is difficult is trying to get a 400-meter hurdler to improve his or her time. You could get them to use either leg. Most people time it. They measure their steps by 16, 17 steps, and they go over always with the right leg, always with the right, or either with the left leg. But you could get them to stop using just one leg and teach them that whatever leg gets there first, that's the one you take the hurdle with. And that's really tough, especially if someone has been doing it one way, his or her entire life. But while it's out of their comfort zone, getting an athlete to do that can only lead to better techniques and improved time. The next is maximize effort by rewarding unsuccessful effort. This is one of my favorites because this is the trickiest, I think, to implement, but it's the most positive. So when I teach young cornerbacks how to play bump and run coverage, I try to get them first to slow the receiver down, right? And that just means moving their feet and getting their hands on the receiver. And with all those young kids, they worry about the receiver catching the ball in them and scoring a touchdown and them looking bad. But I always try to get them to say, don't worry if he gets by you or even catches the pass. All we want to do is see how many times we can get our hands on the receiver. So when they do that, even if the guy catches a long pass and he scores and does an end zone dance, say, you did a great job, you got your hands on him. You got your hands on him. Sometimes you can't stop a guy, but you can always try to stop the guy. And so my last, and another one of my favorites, get things done with targeted symbolic reward. This is incentive-based coaching, but for small things. And one of my favorite examples is my daughter's tennis coach. Whenever a player uses a technique, backhand, drill, we would promise them like, hand tag. So you have all the kids line up and they all do their backhand and everybody made successful, hit it successfully over the net. He would turn on the music and he would have a 1 minute, 2 minute dance party where the kids and parents would join in and dance on them or they would just stand and laugh at him. That was one of his big incentives because they always look forward to that. It's just one of those things that make it fun. Like I said, fun and positive, which is the reason why we're here. I guess I can end there.
All right. Nice job.
Thank you.
So Alan, I definitely agree. That was definitely a lot of information in 10 minutes. That was an abridged workshop. Your story, you were pulling out examples from all different sports, all different generations, different coaches, thrown out between John Wooden and Coach K and Grant Hill, and you just had track examples and basket. I just think you just did such a great job of making these principles come to life. You had real life examples, and with your experience in playing at the pro level, anybody's going to listen to your examples that you give because, like, man, this stuff actually works. I thought that was fantastic, and I like the way you did. You're very conversational. You weren't like, it wasn't a lecture. You're just talking to us, and you're laughing, you're smiling, you're having fun, you're enjoying it. I think it was good. Even when you were asking us questions, you really let your guard down so that we just felt like we could answer. So I loved all of those things about it. What I'm going to challenge you to do moving forward is going to be to look over it with the slideshow, because everything that is, and I'm just going to bump back, everything that's in Elm Tree of Mastery, which is the principle that starts technically here with the Carol Dweck video. You know about Carol Dweck. You mentioned her. So you've got a little lead in to that. Then, how do you actually get better? You talked a ton about effort. So put that in. You don't have to read the slide necessarily. I mean, this one you can read the 3 bullet points, but use what you talked about effort. Use that Grant Hill example, what you can control. I mean, that was so great talking about, the enthusiasm and rallying around something. And you were talking about the Baltimore Ravens in that circle. Like, you can control your effort. I liked that. Then when you got to this part, you don't really have to talk about the elm tree yet. You did a good job at this part. You know everything on the slides. What I'm going to challenge you to do is try to get your stories to be in sync with the order of the slides without turning and reading the slides behind you. I think you can know it well enough that it'll just flow really well with it. Talking about mistakes, we heard from Alan and what he does with mistakes. Now let's hear from Claude Julien. Let's see how he handles mistakes.
Right.
When you're talking about anxiety going down, confidence going up, you've got great examples for that. Control. That's when I would throw in the Grant Hill Coach K story, maybe. You're talking about control. That was great. That was awesome. And then the scenario gets the coaches to use everything, all this information you told them, and put it into practice. So I think you could have done the exact same thing you just did in 10 minutes, and you could have done it with the slides, and you would have been spot on in every single. So I think the material's there, the stories are there, everything about it is an awesome package. I'm just going to ask it for the final one coming up next week or the week after, that you try to let the slides guide the order of things.
Okay.
But I don't think you should change anything about the way you tell your stories and use your examples. Just have them be a little bit more in sync with the order of the presentation, so it doesn't confuse people.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kelly,
go ahead, Ruben.
Kelly, to make sure I understand, are you, Alan, I thought it was great, and I want to tell you a bunch of the things that I thought were great about it, but to understand what Kelly's talking about, Kelly, are you saying that you want to see Alan coordinate his dialogue with the PowerPoint more? Is that another way of summarizing? You want it to be a little more in sync, in coordination with the PowerPoint and the slides?
Yes, because I think if he's doing a workshop live, the slides are going to be behind him, and you want to make sure what you're saying is in sync with the slides. Without reading the slides, keep them in sync with the slides, and I think you'll use the slides to support you. Right. You're not supporting the slides.
Right.
Alan, do you think you understand what Kelly's suggesting there?
Yeah. I mean, it's real easier when, like I said, if we're in a room, it's easier, and they're the right there, and I can't reference them. It's just a little different here, but I totally get that.
Okay. All right. Well, Kelly, can I run by just some of the highlights that I observed? Because Alan, I really enjoyed it. I think your workshop participants are going to be super intrigued by your experience, your anecdotes. Your personality is going to pull people in. You get on the hangout and you're flashing us that awesome smile. That you exude positivity and enthusiasm. I thought the Grant Hill story is great. I love the way that you asked us questions. To keep it conversational, and I love the stay in your lanes example of effort goals. I love the hurdle example of stretch goals. I love the bump and run example of reward effort. I love the music example of targeted symbolic rewards. And I like the way that you teach the tools through an example. Brief explanation, and then a good solid example. I really think people will learn a lot from that. So the one other thing I would suggest for you to consider, Alan, and granted, in 10 minutes you're trying to pack a lot in. So I know, in a full workshop, the coordination will come more naturally, and what I'm about to say will probably come more naturally too. Is even as you're going through the tools, pull us in a little more. We're probably not going to give you as good an example as you have, but that doesn't matter. Every once in a while, it's effective for it to be our example. So maybe you give a personal example of stretch goals, and then you give the brief explanation of reward effort. How have you all done this? And pull our example. And if we struggle, if we draw a blank, or if we're way off, then you add your example in. But pull us in. One of the things we're trying to do with this workshop that's a little different than the last 18 years, Alan, is we're trying to get our participants to think about how they are using the tool or how they will use the tool. So targeted symbolic reward, you heard how I used music as a reward. How will you do it? Turn to a partner, 30 seconds, how are you going to use targeted symbolic rewards? Go, So just pulling us in a little bit more on as you go through everything.
Okay.
Alan, I'm really pumped up about you as a trainer candidate. I just think with the Central Texas chapter launching, what an awesome boost to a new chapter for us to have you coming in as a trainer. It's just I'm pumped up.
Thanks. I'm excited. I'm excited too, which is why I was all over the place.
Awesome. That's great. So then for next week when we do the final, we'll try to pull in some Texas people too to be on here just to be more of an audience for you. And you'll have a full 20 minutes. So you can do Elm Tree again, or we would recommend maybe you try a different principle so that you can get practice doing a different principle. But in 20 minutes you should be able to get through in the slideshow, the beginning of the principle all the way to the end of the principle. So that's kind of what we're looking for. If you need me to pull it up again, I'd be happy to do that. Or if you have a way to see it, we don't need to see the slideshow necessarily, but if you want me to, I'd be happy to do it this way if that works for you.
Okay. Yeah, I will like to do it this way.
Alan, you mentioned that you were all over the place. I don't think you were all over the place. I think you were very structured. I thought there was a very natural, organized flow to it. It was easy for Kelly and me to follow you. What it was not coordinated with the PowerPoint slides, and so therefore someone new to PCA might have a little more trouble following you. But no, it was good. It's structured. You have things well organized in your mind, and so now it's a question of, okay, how do I make it work with these slides that PC has provided me with, and am I going to tell a story here? Am I going to be on this slide for just a few seconds and move forward? That's what you'll evolve with on your own, and with feedback from us. But you were not all over the place.
You have a good issue to work with. It's much harder for us when we see people reading the slides to try to get them to bring in more of their own personal stories and their own examples. That happens a lot also. I love it when it's the opposite way. When somebody's got a lot of great stories, a lot of great examples, and I have to say, maybe try to use the slides a little bit more. It's one end of the spectrum, and you're at the end I would prefer. And I actually just got off the phone yesterday. There's a new trainer in Richmond who's doing a 45-minute coach workshop with no PowerPoint because she's going to be like on the sidelines outside at a baseball field. So, she was just asking me, how do I do this, cutting it down to 45 minutes, and I have no PowerPoint? So I'll just say, call Alan. He's going to hook you up. You're totally fine.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I don't know if Alan did this, but when I have no PowerPoint, I use the book and basically the table of contents, and I just kind of work down the table of contents, and in many ways that's what you did, Alan, within Elm. And yeah, Kelly, that trainer, if you send her the link to this,
I think I might.
You know, this would give her an idea. You know, so.
Okay.
Just for tools too, just to give you for your own sake, just because we have you here and you're a captive audience. The tools that you talk about, I agree with you. I mean, I love so many of those tools. And I think if we had the time in the workshop to go through 5 or 6 or 7 tools with every principle, it would be great, but we don't. So these are the tools that we've sort of highlighted for Elm Tree, and you can have them turn to page 23, turn to page 27 and look at them. I always throw in one more too, because I'm a big fan of effort goals. I'm a big fan of positive charting. They're things that I personally use in my coaching. So I sometimes will throw in an extra 1 or 2. But unfortunately, we don't have time in the workshop to go through every single one. But it's also kind of a good tactic, if you want to call it a tactic, to say, okay, token symbolic rewards. This is one I love. Go home tonight and check it out on page 35. You know, and it leaves them like, oh wow, if he uses this, this must be good. Dog ear it, flip the page, you know, put a sticky note on it. Leave them kind of wanting more and wanting to look more into it. So that's the way you could do it too.
Okay. Very good. I appreciate this. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alan. I appreciate you being on here and taking the time to do this. I know it's not easy, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do next week.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Did you want to talk, Ruben? Because we have our 1:30 call usually. Ruben's already out. I guess not. Okay.